Periodically, within Tim Cantor's art, he will render extraordinary intricate details that look as if they are elaborate mechanical devices. It is a challenge to interpret the broad rationale of these painstaking manifestations, as Tim has stated that he has not connected an all-encompassing purpose for this meticulous expression in his art. One might suppose that the fastidious imagery has a connection to Tim's well-known obsession with time. He writes about time, he paints the delineation of the passing of time, and he has avowed that there will never be enough time in his life to paint even a small fraction of the thousands of impressions that constantly flood his thoughts. The frustration of living a life knowing that his ideas far outweigh even the most hopeful measure of time could possibly have a tie to the reasoning behind his scrupulous designs. He began integrating this aspect into his paintings around the age of 35, notably in a small painting titled Invention, in which he rendered what appears to be a dispersing timepiece. Throughout the following years, the detail would arrive as figures and rings, puppetry and strings, as butterflies, grasshoppers, bees, and undefined things. His enticement to create this dynamic trait within his art grew greater and more developed as it naturally flowed from his mind. As well, the symbolism began to take on more defined personal meanings. By all appearances, time is the most likely assumption that presents a link behind the perplexing elements within Tim's paintings. However, on occasion when he does explain his intentions for his detailed fine work, as it specifically pertains to individual compositions, time is rarely mentioned. In Through the Waters, he essentially describes the bewildering riddle of intricacy as embodying an enduring dedication to love. In his paintings Journeyman and A Moment's Mercy, the highly structured formations imply self-made wings, or rather ambition. The heart-shaped mechanized creation that floats within Tim's painting St. Valentine portrays the versatile layers of both love and heartache. While contrary to the philosophical worth coupled within those compositions, he describes the elements in his painting The Talisman as literal yet fictional representations of inventive mechanical objects that he envisioned to be fashioned at the end of the 19th century. Finally, within certain paintings, Tim will sometimes state that this recurring expression has no known meaning to him at all, and is purely an effect of the natural sway of his mind. Although this explanation may seem initially lacking, it is where we discover one of the more exceptional understandings about the disposition of Tim Cantor's mentality. It sheds light on the premise that he leans impulsively towards complexity, and strangely within that density of convolution, his mind finds itself most at ease. The notion of Tim's infatuation with creating precise imagery, to the likes of clockworks and imaginary timepieces rambling through his multifaceted shapes, has gained him a unique social following of modern-day Victorian fiction fans. This enduring faction of society that has embraced the artwork of Tim Cantor actually began in underground culture as early as the 1960s, carrying on a collective admiration of British and French literature based around fashion, architecture, and steam-powered revolutionary inventions. Early in Tim's life, much of his taste paralleled this grouping with his liking for films based on the tales of Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and Mary Shelley. Though the category still eludes absolute enlightenment towards Tim's motivation on the whole, he continued his esteem for this genre well into his adulthood. An additional theory may be that genetic lineage has played a role in Tim Cantor's predisposition towards painting this complex detail, since his grandfather, father, and brother have all lived their lives as working engineers. While growing up, Tim's father was continuously drawing detailed blueprints for developing structures in which he was involved. Exactness was crucial in his father's diagrams. Though Tim was too young at the time to understand what the numbers, shapes, and lines were representing, it is a feasible idea that they entered his mind abstractly as a child, and impulsively returned as fine art in his future works. Wherever the undetermined inspiration lies for this exceptional trait within Tim Cantor's art, the fact remains that it is truly a fixation for the artist. It must be, for with a single tiny detail brush, Tim Cantor will spend hours, days, months, even years painting his elaborate designs as his head nearly rests on the panel itself to get his eyes ever so closer to the foundation. There are no tools, no straight edges, no templates. There is nothing but the fine point of a slender brush that goes into the creation of Tim's paintings. It is hard to believe when one examines the long, flawless thread-like lines that interlace throughout the perfect circles and shapes that amass atop each other in a conundrum of 1,000 factors. Painterly, many would say that this is where Tim Cantor's skillfulness with the brush is without equal, and surprisingly, the vast convolution of this facet comes calmly and spontaneously to him.